So here's a car that you wouldn't normally see in my shop. It's a Maserati, and a fairly rare one at that. It's a Maserati 4.9 liter Spyder. So this car I inspected for a customer to make sure that it, just doing an inspection on it. And a lot of times what happens is when I'm hired to do an inspection, obviously first off it's usually a Ferrari, but I get a call and it's like, look, there's a Maserati Spyder, can you go and take a look at it for me please, because I really don't really have anybody else that I would trust, and if you don't mind. And I said, look, I don't know Maseratis really well, but as a mechanic I can look at one, drive one, and tell you a mechanical inspection on it, but the details of them I'm not as familiar. So as long as you're willing to accept that as what I would know, I would be happy to do it. So I went and looked at this car. A nice car, good restoration. Panel fit was good. It looked very nice. No real alarming issues that came up in my eyes. And after I completed the inspection, the next question is, well, can you fix the little things that you found wrong with the car? I found like a valve cover leak and those things. And I was like, well, like I said, I'm not familiar with Maseratis. I mean, I know it's just mechanics, but they just said, look, we just really like to have you do it. So I called some friends of mine that work on Maseratis, and I just said, all right, well, here's the question. How hard is it to work on a Ghibli? And they're like, what does it need to do? And I said, well, this one is in really nice shape, but it needs, the valve covers have a little bit of an oil weeping. It's usually from sitting, but the only real solution is to take valve covers off and reseal them. The reason why I ask is on these Italian cars, it can be really easy. If you said to a guy with an American car and said, hey, I need the valve cover gaskets changed, I think I changed them on my Mustang. It might have taken a half an hour, if you said I need to change the valve cover gaskets on a V12 Ferrari, and you want to change all of the gaskets, which again, all the gaskets means the full gasket in front of the timing chain and everything. I mean, that's a good half a day, if not possibly more, to do, simply because you have to take all the you have to take the gas, you have to scrape them. It's a complicated matter. It is not simply popping the valve covers off, throwing a set of gaskets on there. Also, because I'm not familiar with Maserati, I know for a fact, like a Lamborghini, when it's 12-cylinder, like I had somebody with an Espada, and they wanted to do the valve cover gaskets, and I looked at the Espada engine, and I was just like, half of this has to come apart to take these valve cover gaskets. And I knew better just looking at the car, and I said, sorry, send it somewhere else. They ended up sending it somewhere else and having them do it. It did take them many more hours to do the valve cover gaskets on an Espada. So I looked at this. It looked relatively simple, but I asked my friends who work on Maseratis, and it's like, oh no, really easy. It's not a half an hour, but he said it's nothing else has to come off. You just gotta do it, and so I said, I'll do it, but it's just time and materials. So the car is coming to me first. I believe that the transaction's been done. It's just a matter of now the owner has the car, or the buyer has bought the car and has asked me to do some of the work. So it'll be interesting. I mean, this is going to be a new thing for me. I'm going to go through it and see what kind of stuff we can get done on it. And I'll get a chance to drive it and see what this is like. I mean, this was, in its day, this was the competition to the Daytona Spyders. So some people feel that this one's a prettier car than the Daytona. Now, admittedly, this one's a lot more angular. It's a Ghia body design and built car, so it certainly has a different look than the Pininfarina designs of the Daytona. Well, I'm super excited and nervous at the same time. This is a pretty special car. This is a Ghibli 4.9 SS, and it's a car that's pretty rare, and at the same time, pretty neat. So this is the first time I'm taking it out for a drive. and I've never driven one of these before. I've driven a Ghibli coupe, but you know, these are pretty rare cars, so you know, I wouldn't get a chance to drive it that often. Let me get the seatbelt going, and then I can maybe take it out. All the controls are slightly different on this car, so I've just got to figure out where things are. And it'd be interesting because I've driven Daytona Spyders. I've driven 2 Daytona Spyders, and you know, obviously a bunch of Daytonas. So it'll be interesting to see how this feels compared to a Daytona. First thing you notice is that this one has power steering, so that's definitely a difference. So Ghibli Spyders, I think there's only like about 25 of them out there. Obviously, a Maserati is a lot lower production, smaller company than Ferrari. So it'll be interesting to make comparisons. Carburetor's popping and spinning a little bit. I think it's just cold. See how it does when it warms up. Usually this visor's not going to stay up a little bit. Hopefully you can hear me from all this wind noise. But this is a restored car. And, oh, glove box just popped open. So this is the thing you get when you first drive a car that's either been in storage for a while and you know, things are not working 100% yet, so you're just kind of sorting it through. But it seems to have good power. I think I did notice though, this power steering is a little, I think what it is, obviously I'm getting used to it too, and I'm sure within a few miles, but it definitely feels a little twitchy, just simply because it wasn't like a speed sensitive power steering. So it's power steering all the time, and it tends to do what GTCs do, which is they feel a little sensitive, you know, and so the car can dart a little bit until you get used to not using the input. I think it's because I'm in a car like this from this era. I'm used to driving a Daytona, which you know, it doesn't have power steering, so the steering inputs, even though I turn it like this, it doesn't kind of dart because of the lack of power steering. You know, these Maserati V8s, they definitely have an American car feel in a way. But obviously Italian refined. But definitely, man, has that V8 rumble. If you didn't know this car, you would think it's some kind of American V8. It has that V8 sound. So while I'm here, let me close this glove box. Alright, that's latched. I want to see something. I want to make sure. First, second, third, fourth, and fifth. I know fifth is up that way. Reverse is over to the left and up. So just want to make sure I got the gearing right. Bedded in a little bit. They haven't been used much, so it tends to pull to the right a little bit. But man, that's good sound. And it pulls. But it's definitely pulling to the right a little bit. Wide. place. Seats are not as supportive. They're more couch-like, so the bolsters are wide. So, you know, a larger guy would probably be pretty well planted in this car, but this gearbox is nice. Very precise. That doesn't feel delicate like the Ferraris do. Of course, it doesn't have the little clickety-click, but you know, that shifter handle on the Ferrari always feels a little delicate. This shifter definitely has a little, you know, sturdiness to it. Definitely has a totally different feel to a Daytona. Daytona is a little bit more higher strung, and it has torque, but it feels like it wants to rev. I mean, this car, the red line here shows 5,500 RPM. Daytonas are 6,000 and up there, 60, 6,500. I'm pretty sure, at least 6,500. Daytonas are 4.4 liter. This is 4.9. So this is a bigger displacement engine, but you can definitely feel the torque. It feels, the mass-wise, it feels very similar. I mean, Daytona and the Ghibli is probably about the same curb weight. Rear end seems planted pretty well. I'm pretty confident in the turns. The only thing with, like I said, in twisties, I can definitely feel you gotta not be so twitchy, because the power steering can really make it twitchy. I'm not driving it that hard, so like it's the first time I'm driving it. Neat car. Neat car. Well, that was fun. All right, let's see what we got. So it's a leaf spring rear suspension, live rear axle, locating arms, regular shocks. Well, I'm actually surprised. I thought this would have had an independent rear suspension, but it doesn't. Just regular old leaf springs and shocks with just one track rod, not even locating arms, so no sway control on the back. Car still felt pretty planted. Let me just see if there's any other. No, there's nothing else back here. Sway bar. Looks like it's got a nice stainless steel exhaust. Floor pans look pretty nice. I mean, obviously this car's been restored, so it's clean as a whistle. Front suspension looks like what you would find in the day. Ball joints, coil spring, shocks, upper and lower A-arm suspension with tie rod end. I mean, with a sway bar link. Looks all pretty straightforward. Pretty heavy duty tie rod end. Ball joints, disc brakes. Looks nice. The disc brakes look nice and big. Ventilated rotors. That looks nice. It looks like it's a dry sump. Got a big return tank. This is the oil tank up front. And there's the oil filter. Pretty big oil pan for a dry sump oil pan. I mean, that's kind of figured if you had a dry sump, you'd lower this engine a little bit further down. Yeah, that's a pretty deep pan to have a dry sump, but that's just the way they did it. Pretty clean though. And suspension looks pretty stout. Yeah, it looks pretty nice. Big radiator. Wonder what this knob is for. Oh yeah, that's right. The knob is for the headlights. So the headlight motors are not working. So I got to figure those out. That's the knob that raises them and lowers them. That's on the list of things that I have to fix. I checked the horns. They weren't. The compressor was working, but the horns weren't blowing. So I have to check into that too. Other than that, it looks pretty nice. Pretty straightforward car. The shocking part, like I said, I was amazed about was the fact that it's a live rear axle, because it didn't feel like that. It didn't feel that, you know. I mean, obviously, live rear axles will give you a certain amount of confidence because there's no wobble and things like that. But you know, by this time, by the 70s, again, this is designed in the late 60s, so you know it's kind of the way it was. But I would have expected a independent rear suspension. But anyway, yeah, looks pretty good. You know, it's a pretty neat car. So we'll start cracking away at some of the few things that he wants me to get done on this car.